Basically, what we're doing is gluing together a few technologies that we learned in the J School to have live election results on election night. So this is the interactive that we created. It's a map that shows, for each of the main races that were happening on that election, what the results were. So there were several constitutional amendments that kind of had like a clean sweep. So you can sort of hover over each county to see what the results were for that county. And then also the Missouri House races, the Missouri Senate races, and the congressional races. Again, my name is James Gordon, and I was working on the data collection and analysis portion of this. Travis Hartman, who's also a master's student here, is doing his project right now, was doing the visualization, and Roman was really helpful in us getting the server set up and doing deployment. So this sort of started last fall when I was in a boot camp that was taught by Chris Knipe of the Wall Street Journal and Andrew Garcia Phillips. Basically, was learning a particular JavaScript library called D3 for doing visualizations, which I'll talk about in a little more depth later. And yeah, I mean, like one of the things that Chris Knipe was saying as the boot campers were ramping up is that you need to find a project and immediately go out and try to apply this, otherwise you're going to forget it. So that's when I turned to Travis, who was working at the Missourian's graphics desk at that time, and I said, hey, what are you guys doing on election night? And he's like, I don't know yet, but it better be this. So we just had 2 weeks to get things put together, so it was sort of a fast and furious project. The thing we started with is the election feed that is produced by the Secretary of State. This is basically an XML web service that produces XML that you can have access to via a key that they give out to different news organizations, including the Missourian. So this is sort of what we're starting with, and as you can see, like they sort of have things organized by race and then county, and you get the results. We knew that we didn't want to just rely on their web service entirely. That is, we wanted to have our own copy of the data. We didn't want users to like go to our interactive and sort of be waiting for their web service to respond. Rather, we wanted to sort of get their data at regular intervals and then have our own copy of it. In addition to not wanting to have users wait for their web service to respond, we knew we had some enhancements and transformations we were going to make to the data as we pulled it down. So to sort of get the data and to do some of those transformations, we use Python, which is a general purpose high-level programming language. High level doesn't necessarily mean it's advanced. It actually means that it's easier to use. It's abstracted from some of the machine level processes, which means that it's easier for someone like me who's a novice and other journalists to actually use that, to code in that language. It's very popular among data journalists. It's taught here at Mizzou. I've had the pleasure of taking a boot camp that taught Python as well as a semester-long class. It's taught by Chase Davis from the New York Times. It's also a very popular hands-on technology that you pick up if you ever go to the NICAR conference, which I highly recommend. The other nice thing about Python is that it has a very active developer community. So there's lots of available help out there. You can look at other people's examples. And what's also really important for me is that I can use other people's code to do very complicated things. What I'm talking about here are the dependencies that the Python modules that I use in my code that allow me to do things that it would take me a long time to figure out how to do on my own. So one of those is requests, which is how I get the content. And another really important one is Beautiful Soup, which is how I navigate and search the content. These are like in my toolkit that I use all the time. I do lots of web scraping projects, and I could not do what I do without these two things. Then they're, again, libraries I learned while I'm here at Mizzou. Another one that I picked up in doing this project is this thing called LXML parser, which is just a way to parse HTML and XML. It sort of hooks into Beautiful Soup for sort of reading the content and putting it into a navigable tree that I can then search. The script that is just really one Python script that gets the data down. And what we're doing here is we want to use these FIPS codes as the key for the county lists. And so this is like a spreadsheet that was given to us by the Secretary of State that has a little more information about each county, including the numbers of voters, active and inactive in total. Having that FIPS code was important because it helps us in putting together with the spatial data. But yeah, I mean, like the script is here, and again, I'm a novice, so if you are actually a developer, don't judge me too harshly. But at the end of the day, it's really kind of simple. What we're doing is going over each race and going over each county and each candidate and getting those results. And we're doing a few transformations, including summing up vote totals for the race and calculating some percentages, like the number of precincts that have reported, the percentage of precincts that have reported, which gives a little more context to the audience. So yeah, at the end of the day, like XML goes into the Python script, and what comes out is this stuff called JSON, which is a JavaScript object notation. So it kind of looks like what we were looking at before, but what's added is those calculations and the sort of organization that I need to be able to hook it into the JavaScript. So D3, as I mentioned before, it stands for Data-Driven Documents. It's a JavaScript library that was created by Mike Bostock of the New York Times. It is a really awesome and flexible way to produce interactives online. It's taken me a while to sort of pick it up, but I really feel like I'm coming into my own with it. The typical output is a scalable vector graphics, SVGs, which look really great online. And it also does spatial data, like these topo JSON files. So these are like files of polygons, map polygons that Travis was able to get from somewhere. I'm not exactly sure. And that's where, you can see like on the interactive map, we've got several different kinds. We've got those for congressional races, for congressional districts, Senate and House districts, as well as the counties themselves. So now you can sort of see how we're putting the results with the spatial data. So I guess like what was the point of doing this? Like we were able to do it, yes, in a really fast amount of time, but I stumbled across this quote by Walter Lippmann recently. Wherever there's a good machinery of record, the modern news service works with great precision. And I really like this quote because I feel like it speaks to what I see as the value of journalism going forward. To precision, I would also add the value efficiency. I feel like, in addition to the sort of narratives that journalists have always produced, if we were able to sort of extend the machinery of record of public institutions and public organizations, public interest organizations, we can help like have a more informed public and a more informed public discourse, hopefully, as a result of that too. So yeah, where could this be going next? One of the things we want to do is just to prove that something like this is possible, and you don't necessarily need journalists or your graphics people like just drawing these maps into illustrators on election night and continually updating them. Like you can have a computer do that. So we're hoping it could be a framework for ongoing election coverage. There's some more enhancements we could do, like a more detailed view of the districts, like zooming into the county level. And also, if we have our own data that we've collected each year, we can add historical information like the turnout percentages, like how are people actually coming out and voting in the same sort of numbers that they have historically. That's about it. And again, these are our GitHub repositories or our GitHub accounts if you want to follow what we're doing.
So James, do us a favor, show us the interactive map, and let's see how it works.
Cool. Yeah. So again, like you can look at each race, and for each race, you can you can sort of hover over each county to see what the results were. What was, one of the things that I mentioned, some transformations that we have to do, like one of the things the code has to handle is Kansas City, because the election feed represents Kansas City as a county, which it is not. It is a city, and so we wouldn't even have it. Its results would not even be reflected on this map if we weren't sort of adding those up to Jackson County. Yeah, so we have to sort of change the view a little bit as you switch from one election to the next. So like now we're looking at the actual Senate districts as opposed to the counties, because in some cases those cross districts. So the easiest thing for us to do was just to show the top level results for each race. As I mentioned, like a future enhancement might be like zooming down into specific districts. Any other questions?
I have one more. Could you you mentioned that you've taken the boot camp, you've been in classes, you've been on the D3 site and maybe done some self-learning. What path have you taken overall to try to get better at this, and is there a better or best path to take here at the School of Journalism to try to learn these skills?
Well, I feel like something like this is really vital, and I'm glad that there is this sort of showcase that shows the projects that students are working on, because this was an entirely extracurricular thing, and I feel like when you get to sit down and actually where the rubber meets the road, where you're applying things you learn in the classroom to an actual real world product that people are going to go look at, it's not just a motivating thing. You really have to like. It sort of takes it out of sort of artificial laboratory setting where you're just kind of, you feel like you have all the time and all of the possibility in the world. Like, having a deadline, a real world deadline, really helps out a whole lot. Yeah.
Any other questions for James and the team? The microphone.
Thank you. This is fascinating. So, were you in the newsroom on election night?
I think I stopped in a few times, but what was nice about this is like once everything is set up, you just kind of watch the results come in if you've done it correctly. And that's not to say that that means I get to be lazy about things. It means that we did it. If we get to a certain point this election cycle, next election cycle, we could add even more improvements. But it requires us to like sort of look at things ahead of time and sort of do some planning so that we're not just scrambling around. Maybe what you're getting at is, were journalists able to use this for any of their coverage on election night? And I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, that was where I was going with this, because I wondered if your data, which is fascinating, helped in a tight race an editor make a call.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, like there weren't that many close races.
Okay.
Not in 2014, but 2016 will be an even.
Yeah, 2016 is going to be interesting.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Very nice job.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, James. How many times do you think the maps, the data were updated? I mean, if it was every 5 minutes.
We had it set for every 5 minutes. So, I mean, I think they actually started publishing the results around like 6 p.m. or something like that. And I think the last update was, it should say down here somewhere.
10 in the morning.
Yeah. I guess election day, was it the 4th? Is that right?
Yeah, that was the 4th. So that would have been probably maybe if they were the last, final update or whatever. If they tweak the data one more time.
Yeah.
Was your script set to go in and pull it out if it was back, if it had changed? Is that the way you had it set up?
We were logging both the XML data and our own output of the JSON, so that if for whatever reason we need to revert, we could do that. Sorry. Yeah, so we have this like archive directory, was where we were just putting everything. Once the script is set up to like sort of recognize that there's already a file there, and then if there is, move it into this other directory and then start a new one. Roman could actually probably speak to more of the details about like how often and when it was running, because I think you set up like a cron job to do it or something like that, which is not something I know that much about.
Yeah, so the script ran every 5 minutes, but the data was I think updated sometimes more often, sometimes less often, but we just decided that 5 minutes was a good frame. And what it did basically at every 5 minutes, it would scrape the data, get the information from there, update our existing database and append to it and save additional files. And then kind of take those new files and transform them to the hosting environment from which it was hosted. So all you needed to do is, keep refreshing the page at some point. It was, we weren't people to do that. And so it was kind of magical actually to sit in the newsroom, because me and Travis were actually in the newsroom that night, and we were watching, like, we did it, and it comes in, and it was like, yes, it works, because we actually couldn't work with the live feed, only with the demo. And so when we finally saw everything working smoothly, it was like, yes. So.
Yeah, that's something I don't know if I mentioned. Like it was great that the Secretary of State had a a sort of testing API key so that you could look at sort of fake results and do your development and get a sense of like what the data was going to look like. And then at a certain point, we just had to like switch out the API key and we started getting in the actual results. But yeah, like we hadn't actually, at that point we didn't actually know if it was just going to update, but it did, so it was great.
All right, James, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing the next iteration of this for the next election season.